Hello, everyone. Welcome to our community Zoom for COVID, IAQ, and art. Today is Thursday, January the 22nd. My name is Melissa Smallwood. I am the Vice President of Air Support Project, as well as the co-host for this community chat. Just a bit about us. We are a 501c3 nonprofit focused on building practical, affordable clean air solutions. Um, our main project is the development of basically a modular improvement on the CR box called Velo. And we also try to build community within the COVID aware and clean air communities, and part of this is hosting these bi-weekly community chats. We co-host these with the Public Health Action Network. Teresa, do you want to introduce yourself and say a bit about FAN?
Sure. Hi, folks. I'm Teresa O'Connor. I'm the Communications Manager for Public Health Action Network. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are an advocacy organization for evidence-based research, for COVID-aware mitigations and preventions. We're also building software tools for the COVID-aware community, including a global directory of COVID-aware businesses and organizations, and an AI LLM that will be tightly focused on COVID research papers. And it will also let you develop emails to family healthcare providers, employers, and such. We're also working with Air Support Project to help build community. We're very happy to have these spaces and glad everybody could join us today.
All right. And today, our guest of honor is Jon Jon. He is an independent visual artist with experience authoring short films, indie games, and working professionally in music videos, concert visuals, feature films, and documentaries. After having survived numerous episodic health episodes over the course of his life and gathering lived experience around managing these emergencies and prolonged crises, he has unique perspectives on air quality moving into the future. Recently, he has dabbled in creative engineering, custom builds, and clean air concept art. Welcome, Jon Jon.
Thank you.
Anything else you would like to add about yourself before we get into the questions?
Well, I guess some of that art creative stuff involves like some dabbling in fashion, which is like
Interesting.
when I talk about that, I mean like just super personal, like uh nothing to scale up type, but I think that that side of it flows in a little bit with masks. So
Makes sense.
maybe there's some um, interest I have in that, and in that sense, like there's some kind of like pushing the boundaries a little bit, because there's like some aspects in there where some artists in history they kind of dress a little bit further out there. So I think I incorporate a little bit of that in my approach. Um, so I think yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Do you want to say a bit about all of these sculptures that we can see behind you?
Yeah. So I think that I also just naturally try to also follow science when it comes to environmental and climate, and there's a concept of zero waste. Um and I think that uh one of the downsides of like we had this period of like single use things and everything delivered and in packages, and I guess I was trying to still maintain this kind of like reducing waste, and I came up with like a sculptural way to put all the stuff I didn't need into sculpture, which is like drawing and sculpture. They've always said it's like two sides of the same coin. Because if you were gonna draw three-dimensionally, you have to really understand like form. So so if I go into, art and there's like seven basic elements. So there's line, color, texture, value, shape, form, and space. Those are like the seven basic elements. When you look at a visual art, you would be able to think about it in each one of those. I think there's an eighth one, time. That's my own personal philosophy as an animator. So, but with form, form is something that's conceptual. Like if you're drawing on a 2D surface, you have to create the illusion of form. With sculpture, you're working with the actual form. So I think that in my attempt to solve my waste issues, because also in the recent years, it may have just been right before the pandemic started, or it might have been like shortly after, but it was just one of those bad news things where the local recycling companies weren't actually recycling, they were just selling the stuff to to other countries, and there was no real recycling. So then
Yeah, they do
in a
that.
it, yeah, in a similar way where we're having to build our own clean air, like community wise, like in little groups and come up with ways. The same thing happened with like grassroots recycling kind of stuff. So this is just my way, and it's open for anyone if anyone wants to like also do it. And you you can be guaranteed that like the nose wires in little masks, they've gone into the any kind of wasted thing that
Interesting.
isn't like
So like what
a
kind of
risk.
materials? Like are these made from you mentioned nose wires, I mean I know that like bottles and cans, those are big big ones that are frequently
But
quote unquote recycled. I don't know how often they're actually getting recycled. But like what kind of materials?
well, bottles and cans, I'll take those to the spot where you get a little rebate for that. I'll actually do that. And when I go, I'll bring one of my things and they'll hang it. And there's like some of my sculptures, like the
Oh
Star Wars kind of style
my
ones
God,
are
that's so
hanging at the
cool.
local decoy. But yeah, I'm mainly focused on like single-use plastics that can't be recycled. So like
Mm.
bags and things that the twist ties and just the little things, they all add up. So right now I'm making trees, but then I finish them with like a paper mache type of. So paper mache is like glue. It's like a cheap glue, and I wonder, if it's like a thing that other people can do at their to their abilities, but it's not the main reason I'm trying to it's not the main thing I want to talk about. But yeah, you can rest assured that, any kind of argument towards like, oh, these single-use masks, they're polluting everything. But there's ways to take those and make them into an art piece afterwards. So I don't really I think it's like one of those things that people are trying to use. But like similarly with cigarettes, like the mouthpiece to cigarettes, that's like a third of our waste. I think the statistic in Quebec, the province of Quebec, it's like one third of the garbage is the cigarette butts. So anybody trying to make an argument about like masks being like the source of garbage. So anyways, it's like kind of slightly relevant, but um I'll say
Yeah, I
that
can't wait to. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say that with so visual arts, I think it's and there's science and you have like logic, then mathematics, then you have physics, and that physics goes into chemistry, and chemistry goes into biology, and then you have biology at like cellular level, and you have biology at the personal and then at the population level. And um and then you have art, like where does art fit in? Um but if you think about when you're trying to learn how to draw, you have like a point. You press with a pencil down, and you make a point, and then you pull that point into a line, and then you pull that line down into a square area, and then you pull that square out into a cube. So you're kind of going through 0 dimension, 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension. And so with like logic and mathematics, I feel like mathematics, there's like graphs and equations that plot image like sort of curves, like parabolas and different curvatures that visual artists kind of have a way into mathematics. So I guess my family, they're all in the sciences and mathematics, and I excelled at that, but I think I chose visual art out of the excitement and out of partly because I learned how to draw in the hospitals when I was a kid. So I guess it was always there as like something to help me cope through those early childhood, like you're hooked up to an IV. I even got to the point where I would ask them to put the IV in my other hand so I could draw, so that when I felt better, I'd be able to draw. So I think that, you know, I chose not to pursue a career in, the sciences, but I did have pressure from my family to do that. So I had to actually pass and get all these grades with physics and biology. So I feel like I have an interest in it. I just didn't want to be pressured into it, but I've always like kind of kept tabs on sort of more for enjoyment, like just like learning about like how things work and what's new. Um, and then, SARS happened in when I was in college. Um, and so that was also a thing that happened where, and it was also something that happened where it's not only just like it's likely to kill you, but it's also like you survive and there's damage or there's like a worsening of some whatever you have, but it wasn't very like clearly specified. It was just like these are these like risks. So I think that when
Yeah.
you have, yeah, like when you've
And I did
had that
my
happen, okay, go ahead.
yeah, I did I don't know how many people here know this, but for my grad school master's thesis, I actually did a basically like a future casting, it's threat casting type thing on long COVID back in 2021. And part of the background on that was going into the long-term sequelae of previous pandemics and outbreaks that kind of have parallels to COVID-19. So I actually did a bunch of reading on this with the sequelae from SARS, and it was incredibly severe. Um, the study that I looked at, if my if I'm getting my history right, the main outbreak was in like Hong Kong and China and East Asia, but there was also a cluster of about like 250 people in Toronto, Canada. And this study was basically looking at all 250 people in that Canadian cohort because it was so limited, and just following them longitudinally. And it was an overwhelming percentage had long-term disability that is really similar to the kind of stuff we're seeing with long COVID. It's just that because it was limited to such a small group of people, at least in the West, because the outbreak was actually contained, um, it didn't get
Yeah, like
much
sort of.
visibility.
I did hear it did land in Vancouver as well. But yeah, my focus was because I was in Toronto at the time. Um, and the thing that I remember with that is there was these moments where which set it up for me to sort of expect a little bit of a similar thing to happen, is that they thought, okay, all the outbreak was shut down, so we open up again. Great, and then because at the time everyone respected the sort of, it was like a travel advisory. It wasn't like it was like all they had to do was put a travel advisory, then everyone was scared to come. Everyone was like avoiding and canceling and
Mm.
like no, no, nothing. But it wasn't like as if you couldn't, if you had the will to
It
just
was
sort of figure
it
out how
was
to
a
do it.
soft warning.
Yeah, but then it made it so that like, okay, you're getting out of school and you're trying to apply for this job over here and they are interested, but then there's like no news, like, because that's going
Oh,
on. So they don't want to
oh,
risk,
geez.
they wouldn't want to risk you coming. So
That reminds me of like
when they,
mad
and then,
cow disease, which was kind of happening
but
around the same time.
you have to think about at the time, it wasn't like daily flights all over the world to fly somewhere and to
Mm.
have a reason was like really specific. And you only knew so many people, you know, in the neighborhood that you're from or going to school with. It wasn't like an interconnected thing all over the world, right? And so if you
I
have
mean,
like
this was
hundreds of
pre-social
people,
media too. Wasn't this
yeah,
pre-social
yeah, yeah,
media?
yeah.
So
I mean, internet.
I guess the communications about it might not have spread in the same way that they did now, or that they do now.
Yeah, and there wasn't like as much like trying to be like, no, no, it doesn't exist or it doesn't do that or this is ridiculous. And nobody's like travel life was really that impacted around the world other than just us where it is. So your job living in one of those cities is to like just follow it and make sure it doesn't get anywhere else. So I do feel a certain feeling of, you know, the fact, okay, so my story is that they found that it wasn't fully shut down. When they would announce it was like over, then it happened again. And so this is a clear indication of like the method of transmission is not known. Like you don't really know that mode of transmission. You're doing the wrong stuff and it's getting out there. So I think that's like the early, because there was a SARS commission after that, which talks about precautionary principle and assuming things are airborne before you have proof that it's airborne. Um, so the reason why Toronto's SARS thing was such a sort of like a massive blooper, if you want to say, you know, is that they didn't tackle it with airborne transmission the way um, East Asia was hitting it like that, was doing it like that. So there was this refusal to sort of get on board with it then, because I think that it just seems like a lot of work. It seems like a lot of a hassle. But there's the proof that, and then finally to get it shut down was having to adopt airborne, like negative pressure rooms in the hospital. Like you hear about that term now with this pandemic, we now know what it how to do it ourselves, how to make negative pressure, positive pressure. Um, so that's kind of
I mean, airborne's the hardest mode of transmission to deal with. And I think that's probably the main reason why authorities are so hesitant to acknowledge that these diseases are airborne, even though, Occam's razor, it's probably the most likely mode of transmission, especially if it's spreading extremely fast. Because then, if they acknowledge it, then that means that they can be held liable and they have to do something about it.
yes. And I think that they also came up with all this sort of convenience and sort of studying it in a way that they don't quite know. They can't haven't fit the controls properly. So there's this thing that I feel that someone came up to explain the airborne transmission was like, yes, there's airborne transmission, but it's only when they do the aerosol generating procedures that are medical procedures that are like intubating or maybe a nebulizer mask, the stuff that helps you breathe. You have to nebulize medication sometimes through a nebulizer mask, and then the person's breathing it in, or putting a ventilator and intubator. Um,
Which doesn't
because
make any
because
sense
well,
that it was
I mean,
be a
there's a correlation.
situation.
The thing with SARS-1 was that the most transmissible that you would be is once you're already deep in your symptoms, which is more statistically likely you have sought out the hospital, and with the awareness, you've probably called in and the 911 is asking you and probably assumes you're SARS, so then they would come get you with that idea. And then once you're in the hospital and you're so sick that you need intubation, and then in that situation, everyone who intubated you got infected, like they might just say, well, there it is. There's the answer. You're doing that. That's what makes it more transmissible. We know there's many ways to look at it to mean like, well, there's airborne transmission doing other things, right? But I guess that made it this convenient thing for them where it's like, well, I'm only going to need to wear an N95 if I'm doing an aerosol generating procedure. And that just, it's more from the like administration side or the cost side or like the effort side, because if they're going to try to say like we need negative pressure rooms in all patient rooms, we need to isolate each one, we can't have shared rooms, like that would require a redesign, like architecturally. And so I was going to say also, back with my story of like choosing my careers, I was looking at architecture at some point, the drawings, perspective, math, and I also, when I studied animation, I met a lot of people in interior design. And interior design is not like interior decorating. It's like an indoor architecture type of profession where you have to understand architecture, but from an interior standpoint. And I think that there is some really good ways to look at past past pandemics, past civilizations, and how they built their buildings and took into account airflow and air quality, more just from like that more folksy, like it's fresher or it's like nicer. But many societies, cultures had to plan for the air, how to keep it warm, how to keep it cool. And I think with that, you get a lot of the benefits of ventilating out infectious particles naturally. And so maybe we're living in a time where we've forgotten that, or we've ignored that. And 1975, the oil crisis, and we redesigned the buildings to trap heat, which means we're trapping air, which means if we just build buildings like that in all places, we're building buildings in a way that we're making infectious diseases more concentrated than we ever did before. So we're just setting the stage for it to be um not good air. So we have to sort of like find a way to link up old knowledge and new knowledge and guide it so that we're building the spaces that we're living in, uh, incorporating people wanting to live there too, and comfort and everything. So air has all these things, and it's also invisible, and it's also something that people don't really like to, uh, you know, small talk about. Um, but that's sort of where I see is sort of like um, buildings and how we can get, so it's one way right now is just to retrofit your indoor spaces, which is kind of what you guys are doing with Velo and what a lot of people,
Yeah,
what we're
yeah,
doing,
that's
like
one of
building our own
the
stuff.
goals to give people a lower cost option if, you know, renovating their building and their HVAC and all that just isn't an option for one reason or another.
Um, so yeah, I hope I don't know if you wanted me to show some stuff or tell what I'm working on or if this is like
Um,
helpful.
yeah, Amanda, do you want to give Jon Jon the host position so he can
Can
screen
do
share?
with me. Sure.
Yeah, we'd love to see some of the stuff that you're working on.
Okay, Jon Jon, you're in charge.
Yeah, so I'll just show like some what I like to do is sketch and I with animation there's a certain can you guys see this?
Yep.
Uh, there's a certain like character design aspect to animation, so you have to like design what the person looks like and what they're wearing. And so I think that in some ways I've reversed that process where I'm designing characters, but then I end up wanting to sort of like have that little, pouch thing or, and I end up using it as like a fashion design tool almost. So this is kind of me drawing how I used to, the evolution of what I wear. And so this is an EpiPen kit that is a custom like almost like a holster made from recycled bike tube. So it looks like leather. It's like kind of cool. And it has my medical alert riveted on. So that was one of the first things that I sort of customized that has this like health emergency thing to it. I carry like inhalers and stuff in there. Um, and then this was kind of the mask that I was using to get through polluted like in my travels. So there was a moment where I was going on, you know, little trips with my short films to get into a festival somewhere. And then that would maybe lead to other projects to try to like travel back there and try to connect. It didn't mean that I was getting these projects. It just meant like that's kind of what people were doing. And going through Asia, there's a lot more air pollution in certain places than we're used to in like more Western countries, right? Because we shifted our industrial, like through globalization, we shifted that and concentrated it. And so for me, when I was preparing to head to certain places, people gave me warnings like, hey, the air quality is so bad, you might get sick and have to use the hospital. And I didn't want to do that in a foreign country. So um, part of my in advance. Well, this is pre-pandemic, but I went. They told me you should wear a mask, and they were thinking about that like sort of traffic pollution thing, cloth where you're on a moped, and I think people have seen images of traffic in Asia where people wear masks in traffic. But I was like more from the street art, like not that I was very active, but I just like knew a lot of people and I know some basics with spray cans. And so I was more like, I know what mask would probably filter the pollution. So I went to the hardware store aisle where all those sort of industrial respirators are. And I saw these like industrial N95s and I saw the, industrial P100s that I didn't even know all the technical names, but I was just like kind of looking at both and I was asking the person in the store and he was just like, "But you're just gonna walk around with that?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like he just thought it was like weird, but I bought them both and I did a little test while I was over there. And it turns out that for the pollution stuff, you know, the P100s that I got and the seal on it, I could compare, I could tell because of the odors of the chemicals coming in, I could compare. So I felt more comfortable with this one and I used it. And when I came back, and I used it there and there was no problems. Like people may have looked at me oddly or they may have laughed and because they also recognize the pollution is so bad that they're actually like, oh yeah, you're actually doing it. um so when I came back I thought I don't really need this, but then I would encounter all these situations where I did need it because you're breathing in someone's secondhand smoke, you're breathing in uh something, and I even realized at the coffee shop certain liquids that people put in their coffee, they get steamed, in certain seasons, and the door's closed because you want to keep the heat from escaping because it's so cold outside, and then everyone's coughing because they got flu and stuff, and they're steaming these milks that actually affect my lungs. So I started using these P100s just to go get coffee, and it became this thing of like, what's up with that guy? Oh, is there something going on? But it was just me doing my air filtration thing, and I only go to those cafes where they're like cool with me to do that. So this became my style kind of, and I feel like with winter time, there's an extra thing with goggles, uh, for me, is because of like certain eye issues that can come with like skin things I have, and then I'm using screens a lot, and then I have this like habit of rubbing. And for winter time, there's a lot of people that use them on bikes, you know, they wear, so there's a whole style with the snow goggles. And then I wasn't biking too much at the time, but I would just walk. So I would have my P100 filter and my goggles because then my eyes don't freeze and it's warm. And it had this style that just spoke to me, and I wouldn't breathe anyone's like smoke and they'd be coughing and I wouldn't get sick. And I just noticed that it was kind of acceptable only in the winter time and only outside, because people are assuming I'm doing it for the cold weather. And so, but I guess I already had that a little bit in my habits. And so I ended up, this is kind of how I am when I'm in winter mode. Um, and then when when the pandemic hit, I realized I would have to figure out a way to do this like indoors. So this is sort of challenging because people are scared, you know, easily scared, I guess. And I have to try to explain the rational reasons. So what I needed was like microphone because these types of masks they can kind of if you get the ones that have a speech diaphragm, then that's good. But if you just have a default one, which I had, then I started tinkering with microphones. So there's like these little fun karaoke party microphones where they're the speaker as well. The mic is also the speaker. And I knew about that because I'd been to certain like low key New Year's events the years before, and they had these like little mics. So I started using that mic with my mask to just sort of like say what I needed to say. And eventually I figured out a different microphone setup that I could wear. So it's like a teacher's headset. And that's paired with valve covers that I made. Because so as soon as um public health was testing the different masks and how they prevent exhalation particles, that's how I knew that, yeah, oh, there's a valve. And so, within a week or so, some of my friends who were making cloth masks on like Instagram, you had a lot of like people who rose to the challenge, when they were asked to help, they said, please make cloth masks. And tons of them did. And I asked the ones that I knew to make custom ones for the valves so that I could slot them over. And so that was like another custom sort of fashion thing. And I've evolved that a little bit. Some of it I'm doing it with 3D printing now. But ever since I knew about the problem from like spring of 2020, I never wear one of these without, a valve cover or filter retrofitted over it. I wouldn't promote these without that knowledge. So just to say that. And um, I also use the my drawings to try to like come up with blueprints for something that could be built. So this was one of the things that I made. It's sort of a variation on the PC fan CR box. It just to me the fans they always looked kind of like they could be like speakers, and so they reminded me of like boom boxes. And so I have those ones that I in my if I stop the screen share, um over there in the back, I have a few stacked. Well, the one at the bottom is a real stereo, and then those are my sort of first prototypes of like a boombox air filter, and I've had them tested locally with an HVAC engineer for like filtration, and apparently they're good machines, so I have like the proof of that. And the next step would be maybe 3D printing them in such a way where I can easily remove them because right now they're just made with gaffer's tape. And gaffer's tape, as opposed to duct tape, gaffer's tape kind of looks better. So if we're thinking about like aesthetics, it has a like a nicer matte finish, and so it tends to look a little nicer. But I don't know. I think duct tape is also fine. Um, so let me see if I could just keep sharing. I hope this is relevant. Oh, this was one design, something that I was trying to figure out for like how do we eat to at a dinner table, let's say that you can modify. And so it was like off of the concept of like Korean barbecue, or there's like a Japanese grill one too. um so I was thinking about like how to vent, because some restaurants they have this over the table to vent out the aromas of the food you're cooking, because people would complain, oh, when I go and I do my own cooking at this Korean grill, I always smell like the food after. So the nice ones will install these air uh, vents that suck out everything. Um, but I don't think I was looking at trying to install it in my place, but I don't think that's happening. So I'm was just tinkering with what kind of filtration could we have. And I remember I posted it. There was lots of like comments, and so this is kind of where my mind is at, like really trying to come up with concepts for things that exist like in form, and then how do you slide in something like sleek that might not be noticed as much into the existing form. Um, and I'm trying to use my art that way. So similar, like if I could mention like, Leonardo da Vinci, who drawing and painting, but then he went into, concepts of engineering for the future. And he also did a little bit of kind of macabre, but it's like dissecting of bodies to learn about anatomy. So I'm not trying to do that, but just kind of inspiring me to go back to sort of this like Renaissance period where people were just like, you know, trying to not be too contained in their specialty. So in this, I am trying to improve on like how to build things, and I took a course from Mark Rober, an online course called Creative Engineering, and that was a really helpful for me. I don't know if you guys know Mark Rober. Um, Mark Rober is a former NASA engineer, so he worked on the Mars rover. But he was like moonlighting as a YouTuber for many years, and so he's the one that made like a squirrel obstacle course for his backyard, and he was catching porch pirate thieves with these like decoy glitter bomb packages. And he sometimes he has these like online courses where you don't have to be technical or anything, but he kind of teaches you his mindset for how to make custom builds and improve on things that you want to improve on in your life, I guess. And
That's
so
so
what
cool.
happened?
That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, what
Um,
happened with me in the lockdown, really quick, is my garbage can pedal broke, and it was just one of these things that really frustrated me. Like I didn't understand how it worked, and then I made like a R2D2 trash can after like during his course. So I like figured out how the pedal worked and everything. So I think that yeah, I have some of that in me where I'm trying to do that with masks and air filters and yeah. But go ahead, sorry.
oh, sure. I was just thinking, I think it's a good time to take a bit of a commercial break. Um, I want to introduce Keith. Uh, Keith, I don't, are you around? He may be offline. Um, I want to give folks a bit of a taste of some upcoming events. Keith, are you there?
I'm here, but it says I can't start video because the host stopped it.
Oh, that's all right. I wanted to introduce you. Keith is he's an activist and advocate on Twitter, Facebook, several other uh, social media platforms, and we're going to be working with Keith to create some great video content for fan. Um, Keith, can you tell us about some of the events we have coming up?
We're going to do another meeting sort of like this, and we're going to focus on music and entertainment, I guess, expression, um, and just different ways of beating the stress and the anxiety of our ongoing pandemic. We're also going to be highlighting and promoting the work of other groups and various awareness days that are coming up over the months. So we want to try to also let other organizations and people know that if they're doing something, let us know and we'll promote it for you and just get it out there because part of fans' ultimate goal beyond, the more solidified goals is to build community, right? In any way, shape, or form. So if we promote the work of others and what other people are doing, then that's a great way to let people know that we're all in this together. And whatever someone's doing is great. If you're trying, if you're attempting to put off an event, it doesn't matter how large or small. If two people show up, if your post isn't getting enough views, then we can share it. And we just want to, promote the great work that people are doing because, we are all in this together and everybody has a lot to offer, even if it's you know, just giving effort, just trying, right? It's something that we really need to promote.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody who's on this call can follow us on all the social media platforms. And if you've got work to share, go ahead and tag us or message us. We are more than happy to promote other folks' art and music, community work, COVID advocacy work. And yeah, as Keith said, we are all in this together. FAM is going to be hosting a Zoom meeting next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can find the link on our website under events. It's going to be a community meeting to discuss FAM's work in 2025 and our possible 2026 plans. We are looking at increasing our social media education and advocacy. We're looking at possibly getting involved in real life materials, like getting more masks and tests out to people, possibly getting something like Plus Life available for sale. And then we're also going to be doing a lot more community engagement with artists, musicians, really anybody in the creative space. So yeah, that's going to be fans' plans for 2026, and we hope you all can join us on Tuesday to talk about our plans.
Hope to see all of you there. Also, just FYI, I am also unable to share video now because I turned it off briefly to stretch.
Yeah. Hey, Jon Jon, if you can send the host back to me, I can fix that. Thanks.
How do I send the host back? So I go to host.
Yeah,
Click on the
three dots that say more.
Sorry?
The three dots that say more in the lower right.
More. Would it
Or
say
if you want to,
default?
I'm sorry. Or just go up to my name on the chat. Go up to my name in the chat if you've got that open. This might be easier. Here, you know what? Actually, I can do it. Yay. Okay. You're off the hook, Jon Jon. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I'm sorry. Yeah, let me fix the video here.
Anyways, while Amanda's doing that, just a few updates on the air support project side and also a preview of some of the community chats that we're going to be doing in the future. Air Support Project has its 2025 annual report out, which covers the kind of the same ground Teresa was talking about, what we did in 2025, what we're going to do in 2026, what our main projects are. So if you want to just read about that, I put the link in the chat. I'm also excited to announce that we sent our big update to Balvi about all of the progress so far on the Velo air purifier. Balvi is our primary funder for the first stage of this project. And now we really have our fingers crossed for a second round of funding from them. But that is out now. It's big news for us. Also, we have the topics for these community chats for February and March now. February 5th, our next one is going to be on long COVID within the Black and Latinx communities in honor of Black History Month and people from these groups being at higher risk for long COVID, but very underrepresented in the COVID aware and clean air communities. February 19th is going to be on COVID and childhood cancer in honor of Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. March 5th is Sarah, fill me on this one. I know it's going to be in.
I think that's about Long COVID Awareness Day.
Yeah, it's going to be something about long COVID awareness.
And like,
for
yeah, maybe
Awareness Day on the 15th.
Recent research and what other organizations are doing and what the current thrust is with long COVID awareness.
Yeah. And then March 19th, we're going to be doing a community chat with musicians and performing artists, I believe.
Yeah, so if anybody has anybody to suggest that could speak at any of those events, let us know. And also, we want to engage artists more. And like, if you know anybody who is publishing things like open source or under the Creative Commons licenses, please let us know. We're looking to like not reinvent the wheel, but share what everybody else already has, and just get information about COVID and how to protect yourself from airborne pathogens and other pollutants out there.
All right. Any more announcements or housekeeping from people?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, let's get back into our conversation. So, Jon, one of the things that, I've kind of noticed with representations of COVID and the pandemic in, art and media is that we kind of seem to be stuck on a few signifiers and semiotics that are really from like the 2020 and 2021 era. So you have like the baggy blue surgical masks, you have all this stuff about, lockdowns, everyone, having to work from home and be on Zoom. And that, 2020, 2021 was kind of a very specific social phenomenon when it came to the pandemic, and that's still like the image of the pandemic that a lot of people have in their minds. And because the world in 2026 looks nothing like that, I think that those outdated signifiers play into the notion that the pandemic is over, because you're not seeing those 2020 signifiers anymore, so everything must be back to normal. Do you have any thoughts on how to represent the ongoing pandemic in its current state, and trying to move away from these outdated signifiers?
Well, yeah, I made a music video sort of symbolizing some of the things that I saw in the totality, which included, emergency, you know, ambulances and nurses saving people, but also the homelessness that was also caused by some of that, the businesses and, um, depression, and there was like suicide and, you know, so there was like, you're right, there was this like social phenomenon happening all at once. Um, I think that uh, it really needs to be helped by like scientific communication. So if I remember back to animation when I was like uh, learning science, there was this animated shorts thing called Eureka. I don't know if anyone has ever seen that, but it's like this like cute little cartoon guy, and there's these like block letters that says Eureka, and then it's like they're teaching a scientific principle of like why would a boulder, have potential energy to roll down, and then it has kinetic
It
energy.
sounds
And
like kind of sounds like Schoolhouse Rock, but for
it's a little
science.
like in that style, yes. And he's kind of like, and it's funny because stuff happens to him that's comedic. I think it really needs to happen at that level to really visualize like I think it has to be something where air knowledge is the basis by which you then specifically talk about how that airborne transmission happens, because if you just talk about the specifics of the airborne transmission but you're lacking that air understanding as well, it could just feel just out of context, I think. I'll give you an example, like just because I just want to like roll it back to just air as a general thing. Um, so you can learn in like a physics class about temperature and air pressure and how maybe, so if two sets of air have different temperature, they will want to float and there will be a convection current that and they will exchange until the temperature is equal. So this will happen where if it's in the winter time, it's really, really cold outside, but let's say a subway system and it has these doors where you have to push the doors in. When it's wintertime, the indoor of that subway system is probably going to be a lot hotter than the outdoor. And it's going to be hard to push that door because there's like airflow is just trying to push in, and you have this resistance. And in the summertime, you just push it and it just opens. So I notice these things, and where doors that are supposed to close might have some resistance because the airflow is still happening between the hot and the cold. And this would happen in my elevator. And I didn't realize it that this was the reason until a security guard pointed it out because he was laughing. He was just sitting watching the camera of the elevator door, and people would be standing inside the elevator and it's hot in the elevator, but because it's ground floor, there's lots of cold air that comes in. So the temperature difference between the elevator and how cold it gets causes this airflow, and the door would close and think that someone's there and open again purely because of the air exchange. And people would be confused because they thought someone was out there pressing the button to come in and nobody was there. So they'd be like freaked out. Um, so it's just like these little moments where once you know that, then you know that like, okay, I have to hold this door and push it closed, even though there's like this strong air convection current that's happening because of this temperature difference. So there's times where like there's another situation. I'm sorry about these random things, these random like long conversations, but I was sharing this art studio in a basement and they kept complaining about the door not being fully closed. Uh, and how we had to check that the door was closed and locked. And I suggested that it might be because the wintertime, the inside of the building is hot and the outside of the building is very cold. And when you let the door fall on its own and there's that air exchange that wants to keep happening, that there's enough force that the door doesn't quite close to the point where it's locked. And I had to explain this in the long group chat, and people were just rejecting it because they don't have a basis for the physics of air, and it's like too much work to have that in a regular conversation. So I just don't know how else to say it. Like I don't know how else, like that might be the reason, but they didn't really, it was just sort of like LOL, okay. So I think we're um needing to maybe make air as a subject fun. So some of my
Yeah, that's brilliant. I didn't really understand any of that stuff myself, and I do think some basic education on airflow could be really helpful.
yeah, like I remember this cartoon. I mean, there's so many 80s cartoons I grew up with where like masks are cool. There was a TV show called Mask, M.A.S.K. And it stands for something like Mobile Armored Strike something. It's like a, you know, a GI Joe type of thing. But like whether they were good guys or bad guys, they all had cool masks. They had a vehicle that transformed and all this. And in some of the commercials, watching these 80s cartoons, there was, and I think there was a problem back then where there were like fake shows. They weren't actually shows, but they were just people trying to make toys. So they would have an animated like ad. So there was no show, but it was this thing called Air Raiders. And I remember the song to the commercial, and it was like there's the Tyrants of Wind versus the Air Raiders, and everything was around like air, but it was like flying through it. And so I think air can be a really fun and adventurous and heroic or you know, dystopian or sci-fi subject. And in all the films that we actually want to watch, like Blade Runner or Star Wars or whatever is your thing, you know, there's always like a situation where the assumption is they can't breathe the air and they got to wear this gear. And I feel nobody has a problem with that in a fictional story, you know, in a thing that they want to watch. But when it comes time to do that, people really struggle with that as becoming reality. So then I also wonder if there's some issue with the fact that it's fiction that almost reverse prepares you. So it's like because it's fictional, if that becomes real, then you actually think you don't believe it because you saw it in a movie. So I worry also about like if something is, because a lot of movies that are fictional are based in real premises. So some of these films that were already made about outbreaks, people were referencing those movies at the beginning of the pandemic, which is like if you follow what those people are doing, that's like closer, like just visually if you copy that. But then they decided to do the not, you know, to sort of like there were even people saying don't wear masks because you'll spread it to yourself by touching your face.
I
So
mean,
yeah, I worry
a
also
lot of
about, go ahead.
I was going to say that a lot of science fiction that takes place in these future settings is not really about the future. It's more like commentary on present issues and kind of using extrapolation into the future. Like, you know, if this current trend was, you know, exaggerated or we did nothing about it, like this is what it might look like. But really, it's meant more as commentary on present issues and anxieties.
Well, and I do think that futurism, which is a topic that I like to think about, futurism, and I think there's many different branch offs. And I think one of the branch offs that has been sort of chosen for us, or we've just sort of go along with it, is more like the automated and screens and algorithms in a thing you look at or touch. And so early in the pandemic, the big solution was like, hey, we're spending all this money on a Bluetooth app. So you'll download this app and it'll warn you if you're close to someone who has a positive. And in that sense, people didn't like that. They started to feel so so it's this odd thing what people want. They want something easy for that they don't have to do much. But then when you also do that, then they're like, oh, you're surveilling me. So it's like this whole, but they spent all this money on an app versus, real sort of, here's how we're going to upgrade HVAC, or here's how we're going to make sure everyone has a respirator that can be fit tested, provide the fit test to you so and you can see the results. Um, so I think futurism is guiding us towards like really app and data. But there's other forms of futurism, like, mech, you know, sort of that look that people wear that gear. So if we see ourselves as being on a planet and that planet has an atmosphere and that atmosphere has a chemistry to it, and that chemistry is changing in such a way that's going to make it harder for us to live. So there's a climate side. So I think that my view of like airborne infection is similar to how you would make adjustments to a changing climate in the air quality in that sense. So I almost think of it more as an environmental thing. Uh Sort of like, how would you prepare for that? You know? Because when you go to Mars, you have to wear gear to breathe. So I see it similarly. I guess my mindset was like the air got turned off. The breathable air got turned off when this outbreak happened. And now I'm building the air that I can breathe, and I'm bringing it where I go to some extent, to the extent that I have uh bad news for Elon Musk. Well, I think that when we approach going into space, we learn things and we apply them back to our regular lives. That's really what the benefit to society is. So I think that
Yeah, like a
I
lot.
view Earth.
Yeah, I think a lot of the technology we use today was originally developed for, during the space race and, trying to solve problems in that environment. And, like you said, they found useful solutions and knowledge that can be applied to problems here on Earth.
Well, and so the research about low CO2 or low air acidity makes for specifically SARS-CoV-2 particles to be less aerostable so that they die at a rate that's much faster than if die in the sense that they are no longer infectious, right? Like there's a certain stability. So these particles, these viral copies that are in us, in our blood, there's a certain acidity that they need to linger, right? To keep being infectious. So when we exhale, there's a certain amount that just die off just by the fact that they've left the body. But then the others that remain, they can either linger for a very long time, or they're there, they linger, but they are no longer infectious because the acidity in the air doesn't accommodate for the pH of the liquid droplet, to support its aerostability. I guess, hopefully I said it accurately, but it's the work of Al Hadrell. And I think that approaching air, the air chemistry is just another tool. And really what that means is like outdoor air really does have so much more going for it than indoor air as we've constructed it. And so then that means that we then have to address what are the comforts of the climate outdoors and indoors so that we can either do things outdoors and be comfortable and accepted, or we bring that same level of low CO2, low acidity indoors. Uh, so we got a comment.
I think that's for us for a potential future guest. Francisca, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I have like so for me, I do most of my worrying for other people because I have such a strict set of like protocols that I'm worried about my friends who perform, who are artists, and they go and they have to support their family in that way, and seeing, you know, do they get health problems, and if they are, is that related? And it's like
I mean, you could say the
such a
same.
touchy thing.
Yeah, although you could say the same for anyone who has to work an, in-person
Exactly.
public-facing job. A lot of those jobs have, a lot less fanfare than, being able to do art or perform.
Well, I would say that that early time period of lockdowns where it was a shocking thing where, you know, a place where you see all these people all the time every Friday, Saturday, and it's just ghost town. It's just empty. And what ended up happening was a lot of people ended up working as delivery people out in the bike lanes. And I, having a pre-existing set of anaphylaxis issues where the wrong food can kill me instantly, and there was no way I was going to let myself go to the hospital. So I was in a prevention mode so that I don't go there, and then you go in for one thing and then there's this other thing, and then and then there was even people talking around the world where like, oh, if you have too many conditions, we might not even save you. We might have to, you know, sorry, printing. Chris Colville says, I've had to turn down printing opportunities because they refuse to offer mask requirements for all. I adapted and do it all online. Yes. Yeah, so um oh, acting. Oh, I have something to say about that too. But it's just sort of on a functional side of like this lockdown issue where, okay, the only way is for them to deliver food to your address. And that was not working for me because the ways that they were bundling foods wasn't itemized. It wasn't able to say like, you know, these specialty products that I can only have. So I had to create my own 100% or as close to 100%, taking into account all transmission chains, like gloves and goggles and respirator, and use that to go get myself my food from the essential places like grocery stores. And so in doing so, and so I used the bike as well as my main transportation because it just made sense to me. So I'm not in a crowd. I'm not in a vehicle that's got a crowd. I'm not underground, and I'm not in an Uber where they don't understand. I'm on a bike because if I walk, people on the sidewalk, that's where I would get a lot of like laughter about it. Because you're like, well, you're outside, right? But I just wanted to maintain the air, I don't know, purity corridor or bubble, whatever you want to call it. And I just felt like, this whole sidewalk thing is not working. So on bike, it makes more sense because I got almost like a helmet going on. And I saw every other delivery person out there. So I lived those early times with the delivery people, not as much with sort of staying in, because I also see in an apartment, there's a risk of air circulating within the building. So there's issues with lockdowns where no filtration or ventilation or masks or respirators is taken into account because you could be locked in with with positive cases. You'd be locked in with people that are going to refuse. And there's no law that governs the interior of an apartment where there's shared spaces. That's there's a debate on sort of like where does the home begin type of thing. So I would say my precautions are from my front door of the apartment. Um, when I leave that, I'm in the mix of air. So I feel that there's a perspective on the delivery people. They all had to cobble together their own stuff similar to me. So they had their shields and different versions of masks that they had to provide to themselves because it was such little agreement on what was going on. And I think that those people are in a huge risk as well because they have to go into the crowded spots to pick up the deliveries to then bring it to people, right? So if we don't think about those workers and giving them that knowledge, then we're not really breaking transmission. We're sort of breaking it when we see it, but we're not taking into account like the meat packing plants or whatever, the food packing, all the things that people are relying on, um, the shipping and all that. So, but with the acting stuff, I do remember a thing where um, they were trying to get projects to continue, and the insurance was the hardest to get. It was like you could find people willing to go and take tests and do all the protocols, whatever they were told they were going to do it, but the insurance companies wouldn't put up the money for like in case someone got sick and died. Like, so the insurance for anything in person was really high, and actually they pivoted to animation. So animation was kind of a reverse indicator because animators can work at home, even though in the past we've always asked for that and they always refused, like, no, you have to come in. And then at this point it was like, oh, that's perfect. But I also felt like the opportunity was missed for the acting stuff where you could get all these like sci-fi shows where you have to wear that kind of mask or gear, or you have a costume mask and maybe you have an N95 underneath it. They just missed that whole opportunity to um, go with the projects that are already suited for that type of thing. I don't know, like ninjas or whatever you want to do, build it
Well,
into the style of it.
well, I mean, Hollywood and, kind of the film and TV acting business was one of the last holdouts for having COVID precautions on set. Um, and it's, kind of a bummer that they eventually dropped that because back when they were doing that, it's like, oh yeah, you actually understand the risk and you're taking like effective measures to mitigate it.
I remember I was in contact with a an account. Um, they're anonymous. They were in Hollywood in the set building scene, and with the set builders, I've known a little bit about that too, with some of the features that shoot their VFX here, and I've worked in a little bit of the story departments there. And so with set building, they have to recreate uh an accurate, time period maybe in the past. So they have to build a house or a room or something. And so they're very much like construction workers, but with like an artistic purpose. So they have a lot of mask knowledge as well. So I think in movie sets, you would find a lot more like knowledge around respirators in places that you wouldn't fully totally expect it, not necessarily in a medical context, but maybe like in some overlap of it. And so I remember some of the DIY ways to check your seal. We would discuss that. And so there's a lot of like knowledge from the person from practice, from experience with masks. So I would say maybe we should like, try to find those people that kind of care about both, where they're in some other industry or field that uses respirators, but then maybe they have also a health way in, sort of like a personal experience or like a thing they're protecting themselves from or someone else. And there will be this like horizontal slice across all these areas of society where like, wow, there's so many masks being used, like from construction to recycling to 3D printing to um, industrial painting to agriculture. There's these, mushroom farming, and there's knowledge there. And so, yeah. And right now, I'm also on a project which is uh, I'm trying to follow the steps to do an open source 3D printing a respirator. So it's where you are trying to either mold your face and then get that 3D scanned and then 3D model something that you're going to print that's based off of the shape of your face and then print that, which can then interface with real filters that you could get, like the GVS filters, and have it
Is the
basically be,
Would the
yeah.
3D printed material be solid enough to not have any air coming through it?
Yeah, so this particular method is it's 3D printing the outer housing, which you then inject the silicone, and then you remove the housing, and you're left with a silicone. There's like multiple materials in it, and I'm just starting to get through the process, so I've been ordering all the technical equipment, and I'm trying to get it set up. But I could also show my model
Oh,
if
cool. Hey, Jon Jon, I'm wondering, are you familiar with open source medical supplies? They
opened. I
they have a library. Apparent, I haven't checked it out, but apparently they have a library of open source 3D printable designs for various medical items.
Yeah, they're also
I'm gonna look them up.
they're also a friend to both of our organizations.
Yeah, I don't know if that would what they have would fit in with your ideas, but you might be able to get some designs from them.
Yeah, thank you. I'm checking them out. Maybe could I share screen again? I'll show you. Sorry if I
Absolutely.
have
Yeah,
to
give me
ask for
just a
the.
sec here. Oops, just kidding. Hold on. Okay, go for it, Jon.
So I'm learning Blender now, and so if I turn this off. I wanted to hide that. But basically what I did was I did a plaster of Paris mold of my face. So I had to put, Vaseline on, wet the plaster strips, and get basically a negative of my face. So the inner part is the surface of my face. And I left the eyes open and I left the nostrils open because I did it myself. So I didn't get a mold of like the nostrils or the eyes, but so it's just sort of an opening. And then once it was hard, I just filled those spots, right? And so I have a negative, and then I filled it with paper mache on the inside. So I put a saran wrap, I put like plastic wrap inside, and then did paper mache. And once that dried, I pulled that out, and I had a positive of my face. And I went and I took that and I got it 3D scanned at a lab. The reason I did that is like you can just 3D scan your face, but then I would not be masked. And then I didn't really bother to, do the whole like, because I don't even fully trust if this lab was they all wore masks. I wouldn't necessarily fully trust it, So I trust it more just I get my do my own mold and it's like a fun art project or whatever. And then I bring that to the lab, we scan it. And so then I got this file, and in Blender, there's a little tricky thing where you have to set it to the real world measurements. So I had to like, so there's a default that sets it to meters. So it's like way bigger than it's supposed to be or whatever. So I got it to the right scale. And then as you saw earlier, I think where did I face scan? And my ears, and I'll get rid of my face. So, and let's see if I have my drawings. No. I had a bunch of drawings in here that I guess I must have deleted them. But I'm working with the open respirator folks, and they liked my sketches that were more like kid friendly designs. Because if I did a bunch of other sketches, and some of the stuff I like to wear is a lot more like science fiction-y, but they liked the kind of like sort of ears. So I'm kind of playing around with a little bit of costuming. And what I really wanted was this front piece to have like kind of a face or like a smile or something you could modify, paint it the way you like, and it could have some kind of expression. So and these filters are the ones that are from the GVS ellipse. So I did 3D scan those as well. But the 3D scan wasn't great, so I had to just sort of uh, figure it out. So when I do finally 3D print this, hopefully before the end of the month, we're gonna see if those GVS filters really fit in, and if it doesn't, then I'm gonna have to, just keep iterating the model to make it fit, and then I'm gonna fit test it with a port account. So that's what I'm doing, and just uh, if you have any questions about that, yeah, thanks. Um, so like that is something that I really want out there where, it's kind of like going back to the beginning when people didn't have supplies or or supply chain affects how you get to protect yourself. And I think that there is something empowering about you being able to print something that is then testable, and then you have that one for you, and that's the beginning, and then that spreads, and then it's like a personal thing because you can make it look how you want to look, and there's this whole side of it, right, where you, in a sense, have that power to decide, like, for yourself, like how you want to present yourself, and make it fun if you want. So I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Jon Jon. All right. Um, well, we've been going for a while now. I think it would be good if we can open the discussion up to any questions that people might have, or comments. Uh, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. You can find that option in the React option in the bottom menu. There should be an option to raise your hand. There's also been a bit of a side chat going on in the chat. Okay, well, if nobody has questions or comments they want to come on mic for, then I think we can start wrapping up. Sarah, Teresa, Amanda, anybody have anything that they want to say? Oh, Jon Jon, go ahead. You're muted.
My bad. I was really mean earlier. Hold on. You should be able to unmute yourself, Jon Jon. Okay, try. It's yeah, try now.
Oh,
There we
yeah.
go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was just trying to say, like, maybe I think everyone was muted.
Yeah.
But maybe we could just
Oh dear.
ask people here if they uh do art. Like some people have, like Chris has mentioned. I've seen your skits, some of your skits. So I see you're still doing like acting. So that's like been pretty fun to watch some of that stuff. Um, so kudos. I just wanted to know some of the other people here and what what interests them, and also with the art side, I think that there's like, I'm trying to figure out if applying to the traditional art grants, the funding for making events happen, if those granting bodies are going to be receptive or not to parts of the budget going towards this kind of accessibility or not, because like, let's say I want to make an art show and it's like either like a lot of times my art has an understated link to the health things that I've like gone through, but it's not always like super right up there, but it's there. And I think that if I'm going to do a show, I'll probably have that stuff there on some level. And I'm trying to figure out if it needs to be like understated or if it is something where it's like, this is an accessibility thing. We're going to have these filters here. We're going to have these like precautions here. This will be recommended. This will be provided. Or if people are so traumatized, even across the art funding, where they don't even want to think about it either, because if it's not a doctor saying it, then why are we saying it? So this is sometimes how I kind of curious. Molly
Right.
has
Yeah, Molly, you have your hand up.
Hey guys. Yeah, so I taught a class. I guess you could say dancer slash former dancer. I don't dance much anymore, but I did teach a class recently, and I think it still comes down to education as well because, there are people that still think that surgical masks um keep things from becoming airborne. And while it's appreciated, the woman that was the class where it was held, I had my N95 on, but she asked me at the door, she was like, do you want people to wear their, some masks? Because I have some, but they were just the surgical masks. So essentially, it's like, yeah, I mean, it might keep something back, but it's really not doing much of anything, especially when people, their breath and the exhalation. So um, I guess I would be coming from more of a physical, in person, like dancing. But I think still, essentially, it comes down to like education and even like what masks are truly working. Because at one point we thought cloth masks and just putting anything over our face would work. So as time has gone on, we've learned that what masks actually work. And I don't know. I don't know if anybody had any insight to that. Sorry about my dog. He's whining in the background.
Yes, I do. Thanks, Molly, for saying that. And I also am from some parts of the dance world, like just dabbling, and I don't do it as much now, but I still go sometimes with my big mask. But yeah, with the surgical, so like my dad is from, he's like this, he's the one that taught me all the math, physics, chemistry. He has experience in nuclear like simulations. So, they all need to know about respirators, like the big ones with the shield. And when the pandemic hit, I was telling my sister the kinds of masks are that I wear, they're all going out of stock. Like you should hurry and get some for yourselves. And so she ordered one for herself and for my dad. And my dad wore it all through those early days where the news communication around the world was like, this is a problem, this is a problem, there's people dying. He wore it consistently. So he didn't really have issues in those early times. And I consider him at risk because he's up there in age. And I'm sure he got harassment, but in the kind of like more subversive, sarcastic way, not so much in your face, but I'm sure he got teased a lot. And then now I would prefer if he's gonna, because he then switched into surgical masks. And I think it was because of peer pressure and lots of other friends his age who also have, kids who are doctors or whatever, saying that this is what the medical field does and this is enough and this is how and there's drugs and there's treatments and you'll be fine and there's all this stuff. And so, okay, fine. He's not going to wear the big ones, the cartridges, because there's a lot of weight to it. But I'll still send him the N95s, which are respirators. Um, and it's like I have to go over to him. We don't live in the same city. I have to be there and argue with him point by point in the same way that he would teach me the physics mechanics when I was a kid. And he would agree. He'll agree point by point and understand and understand. And then we get it on him, and then he doesn't like it because it's too hot. So I get him the one with the valve. It's the same model, but there's an exhale valve, so it's like not as hot. And then the next time I see him, I ask him wear a mask coming in, and he's got a surgical mask on again. So I'm not even sure if it's a level of understanding anymore It's just something else
I can actually relate to
entirely.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I can actually relate to that because I have discussed this before with Amanda and other chats that we've had. My mom is older, and we were just talking yesterday. I said, you are somebody that, she's a former journalist. She's not stupid. Like, she reads and she is intelligent, but she is just now getting to the point where she's wearing an N95, and she just told me to give her some grace, and she's getting there, but it's hard to wrap your head around that when somebody is intelligent and they know the things but they're not doing the things. And that's been one of the biggest things I've had to grapple with, is just I guess a lot of the mental anguish, and just seeking to understand people, and just, I guess, the psychology behind a lot of it, because there is a lot of that too, like you said. Um, and yeah, I mean, you want your loved ones to be safe, and you want them not to have to continue to be, their systems be bombarded by, a variety of things besides just even COVID. But yeah, it's kind of frustrating sometimes. So I certainly can understand where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, and now he has this thing where he claims that he can't hear what I'm saying, or what like sometimes when I rarely go back to see them, it's like maybe twice a year. I gotta rent a car, bring all my gear, bring it in, set it up, explain it. And usually if like my sister and my sister's boyfriend, they are very receptive to masks, and they'll mask for me, but I convince them. I'm like talking to them like, you should be masking for yourself. Okay. And because then that puts me more at ease also. Because I know if you're going to mask for yourself, you are like so much less likely to be in that moment going to be infecting me too. And that's what I'm bringing as well. So there's this like, I'm trying to convince them for themselves, and I'm hitting them with peppered throughout life. I'm like hitting them with different things that are like knowledge of the threats and stuff. But so they're always fine with wearing masks. But it's like the fit is another issue, right? Because my sister's boyfriend he's a very large man. And I think that sometimes there's those things that we don't, as I hear or think about from big guys, they're supposed to like project like nothing ever bothers them. And then masks are not made in their size. So you tell them a good one and it never fits around their whole head. And so they got to wear the ear loop ones, but he'll wear the ear loop KN95s or whatever. But then my dad thinks that he can't hear us, but I think that's a different issue, right? Because we can hear each other. So I don't know. I think he might be struggling a little bit with the hearing and is blaming that on the masks. So there's this like additional thing of like, I don't want to wear these masks. They interfere with people talking. So it's really tricky because that's a really sensitive issue too. Because this is. But anyways, I see Chris has his hands up.
Yeah, Chris, go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Jon Jon, I just wanted to, I know I'm right with you on all of this. And a good example, and also, it doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. The smartest people out there still have this cognitive dissonance, and it's because of the media that they're exposed to. My husband is extremely smart, the smartest person I know, but he hates social media. So he has no social media. He's not part of it at all. Therefore, he relies on mainstream media. And what does mainstream media, what are they covering with COVID? Nothing. Nothing. And they haven't for years now. So even though I have long COVID and he's seen everything that I've gone through and am going through, he masks everywhere. but I've recently found out, even though I knew in the back of my head, he works in a very small office, only about 7 people there at the most, and he works in his own little area. He doesn't mask at his office at all. And because his rationale, and there's something to it, but he thinks, well, it's lower risk because we don't have any clients coming in, blah 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 blah. So I had to take my time and take my energy and explain to him, you're not just doing this for me, you're doing it for you. You're in your early 60s, and I don't want to see what's happened to me happen to you. And, it wasn't that simple. There was a lot of back and forth. And, he said, I drink all day, water and coffee. I said, well, there are sip valves. So once we got through that, he said, okay, show me the sip valve. How do I do this? So I became, I walked through, we demoed it. So now he's doing that at work every day. He's doing the sip valve. So now I've got him on board with the masking all day. I'm hoping it will last. Another example quickly. I live in a large condo building here in New York, and I always mask everywhere outside of my apartment, but we have doormen upstairs, and one of the doormen I always saw him in a surgical, and I first of all, I said, thank you so much for masking, but you should try one of these N95s. And I explained, and at first he said, no, that's okay. They're not going to let me wear that. People are going to give me a hard time. Every time I see him every day, and I just kind of kept, suggesting it. And he saw me and he's like, well, I can hear you. I said, yeah, of course you can hear me. Yeah, I can hear you. And now I see him every day, and he's wearing the N95s that I gave him. I gave him like 20 because I run a mask block here as well. So I don't even know what my point was anymore. I'm sorry. But I'm with
intelligence. Just kind of intelligence, like just speaking on intelligence, and that it didn't really have anything to do with that for real.
It doesn't at all. And yeah, my husband is a prime example, but I was able to, I think when you get them with a personal story and that experience, it can change some people's minds. It's extremely frustrating. Extremely frustrating.
My mother certainly watched me through this entire thing because I was one of the early ones. I had in June of 20, and then proceeded to have a few more infections at least. And so that was the other factor where, I had to kind of get past the taking it, internalizing it and making it, it felt very personal. Like, well, how could you watch me go through something like this and then still not, but I think she's slowly getting there. But you're right. I think there's a lot more to it than just, I guess, intelligence. I use that as an example only because I guess I'm drawing from that, because when I see people, if they do read something, it seems to stick with other things. I guess when it comes to, if you're reading a peer-reviewed article or you're reading a science article and it says like, I don't know, like when we're learning about PFAS or something, people will try to scale back or stop doing something, where it just makes me wonder why it doesn't translate into something like this, especially after going through a pandemic, especially after watching millions of people die. And perhaps it's just because we're not seeing those quote unquote catastrophic numbers anymore. And perhaps it just doesn't feel as catastrophic, even though a lot of us know that it's still an issue.
Yeah. It's crazy. And I mean, I'm kind of living in PTSD land because I went through a lot of this during the worst days of the HIV/AIDS pandemic and condoms. And I was a very young supporter of ACT UP. I marched a lot with them, and I also took care of a lot of people, and watched people die. And the resistance to condoms was very similar to the resistance to masking. So I see a lot of eerie similarities, aside from the obvious ones, like COVID attacks T4 cells and I mean, T, what am I saying?
CD4, CD8.
Thank you.
Talk about the CD4, CD8 ratio.
Yep. And T cells. So it took a long time to get people on board with that, a very long time. And a lot of people who refused to do it died. Because they felt it was an invasion of their freedom. It was an invasion of privacy. It was, I mean, there are a lot of other issues connected to that, but there are a lot of similarities to the AIDS pandemic and what we're going through now. A lot. And I know people don't want to hear that.
Absolutely.
People don't want to hear that. And I have a lot of people in the LGBT, well, especially gay men, are angry at me because they think that by making these comparisons that it's negating, but it's not. I'm not diminishing.
Oh, I've heard that argument before with other things too. As soon as you start comparing something for valid reasons, right? Like there's some really strong similarities with how COVID and long COVID are being treated and how they actually are, like, physiologically, right? But if the folks who have been in the older fight for so long, they might feel diminished, and it's that's a tricky conversation to have.
It really is. But anyway, I'm grateful that we have these spaces.
I am so grateful for you joining us today, Chris. It's great to hear all this context.
This is why I do what I do. I mean, when I lost my job in September of 2024, I had to think about it. Like, okay, I'm gonna use my art for this because it keeps the conversation going.
Absolutely.
And we need to do that. We need to keep talking about it.
Yeah, in as many different ways as we can think of, right? And that's exactly where artists come in, is with that creativity and just finding all the experimenting, finding different ways to talk to people.
And that's why I do the skits, because it's something that can make you laugh, but it also could make somebody think about it. At the end of it, you're like, oh, wait a second, there was a message there. Like, that Trish the pharmacist, yeah, she's funny, and we're making fun of someone like that, but we're bringing up some good points. And so if you can laugh and learn something, that's also, I think it's advocacy. I used to kind of be hard on myself and think, well, I'm not doing enough, but I think everything counts.
Everybody has their lane and every little bit counts. It's going to take like a million grains of sand, right, to push the arguments.
Well, right. And I keep saying, if you want to compare it to HIV/AIDS, I think we're in 1987 right now, which is, think about how long it took to get the cocktail.
Early. That was early, right? Like,
well, yeah, it was first, the media first started covering it in 1981. And the administration, I'm not even going to say his name, didn't even mention it until 1988.
My goodness.
So HIV tests became available where they could detect HIV, and they were making the connection to how it was transmitted. That was like 86, 87. And medications that could actually save people from dying, that wasn't until 96 where they came up with the cocktail. So that was 15 years.
And when did the earliest Kaposi sarcoma cases start coming out? Was that around 88?
No.
Earlier?
KS was in the very beginning. If not, it was before. It was incubating for 10 years. So in the 70s, people were sick and dying and they didn't know why.
Oh my goodness.
So it didn't get coverage until 81, and coverage meaning very specific scientific papers. And that tiny little article in the New York Times. So it took a very long time before people got on board. And celebrities, it took celebrities dying.
Yep. Rock Hudson, right?
Rock Hudson. Yeah, I mean, it sounds evil to say, but I keep thinking nothing's going to happen until a major celebrity says the word COVID and admits that they have it and admits that it's making them sick. And we haven't seen that.
Yeah, the closest, I guess, has been Violet Affleck.
Right.
She was at that UN, but
Yeah.
it's not even close to what Rock Hudson's visibility was.
No, if Taylor Swift,
right,
she's been sick quite often, touring the world and spreading SARS everywhere. If she said something, there might be a sea change. But she won't, because all of her people, her PR people, her market, they're telling her not to. I mean, there's a lot
she's,
of
she's in a field where everybody around her is saying, don't do that. Right.
Yeah. It's a concentrated push to not mention it because insurance companies won't cover them. And it's all about money, as jaded as it sounds.
Yep.
So I'll shut up now. I've taken up enough space.
It's good to hear from you, Chris. Really appreciate you coming here.
Thanks.
Yeah, really appreciate you having here, and we'll definitely want to reach out, like just from Fan and Air Support Project, to see how we can like maybe work together and help just to promote you, because your stuff is like really awesome and really making.
Are those available?
That's hilarious.
Oh yeah. Chris has an entire shop, and he's got videos, all kinds of stuff. So highly recommend.
Okay, I need to like look into more on what you have and like see how, and yeah, maybe we can like talk about that too. That's how we can work together. But like, definitely, we'll be promoting your stuff a lot more.
Yes.
And I have seen it, and you are just like, it's great to see like just like humor being brought in because yeah, like that is like a lot of ways
it's
like,
important.
Like how people might
it's like a secret passage to get information into people's brains, right? You code it in some humor and they've gotten informed before they even realize it, really.
Exactly. I mean, don't be mistaken. I make a lot of angry ranting videos too, where I'm screaming into the void, but yeah, the funny ones make a big impact. And with my shop, it's been open for a year now, and I try to get like a marketing people on board, and I've been told flat out, we can't market you unless you stop selling COVID stuff. So that's the end of that conversation.
I think we can help with that. Can you drop a link to your store in the chat?
Sure. He did a bit farther up. It's
okay.
.com.
Oh, okay. Very good.
I'll do it again. I'll do it again.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jon Jon? Yeah, I was gonna say with thank you for sharing those experiences, and I feel like with condoms, it's like I grew up at a time where there was no time where there wasn't condoms, like it was like part of it's almost like associated with like, oh, why are you getting condoms? Well, you have a date. It's like a kind of a good thing, I guess, in a way. Like, and I feel like I remember they would have these like, I don't know, like I think there was like these special ones. It's like, oh, it's a tuxedo condom that's like you're gonna have at prom or whatever. Like there's these. So I feel like I'm doing that version for masks.
Yep.
It's like,
yep.
Here's
Absolutely.
this like,
yep.
Souped up version, and maybe there could be some way of it to be almost like, oh, why are you wearing a mask? You're going on a date? I don't know. Like if that could like.
Yeah, there's some manufacturers that are making like fashion masks or masks with patterns. And I'm seeing folks, you can get like chains that you can buy on Etsy to kind of decorate your mask. And I think all of that is good and fun.
Mm-hmm. It's normalizing it. It's all about normalizing it.
Yeah, it's making it part of like, well, this is my look, right? I'm gonna coordinate my hat and my shoes and my mask, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and I kind of have. Well, this is on recording, and well, this is like a half joke, but have to, but like I have been kind of thinking like, what about like some kind of like superhero themed, like a Deadpool full body condom that incorporates the respirator into the suit, and then you're just good to go. You just wear that.
I love that. I love it.
That's
But I don't know
amazing.
if that's too weird, to
I
COVID,
don't I
do
don't
out
COVID
there.
safe gimp suit.
I don't know if that's I don't think that's too weird.
Ahead of its
Um,
time, maybe,
yep,
but like, yeah, no, I'm kidding.
Because then you'll get the whole cosplay scene, and then they're just ready to go,
yep.
to just, well,
Oh, cool. Thanks for that link, Leora. You know what, you guys, it's coming up on 2 hours now.
Yeah, we should probably be wrapping
We should
up,
probably
but
start
this has
wrapping
been
this up.
great. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you, John, and thank you everyone else who shared. Really awesome work that you're doing, Jon Jon. Just wanted to um, emphasize for everybody, Jon Jon does have a Patreon. He put a link to it in the chat. So if you would like to support him, please subscribe to that.
and we can send out an email with all of these links too.
and yeah, no pressure, and the Patreon is mostly free, so like you could just join if you wanted to. But then I also posted my builds on Substack, which is also free. So those are the builds of like I rigged a straw through my respirator, so similar to a sip valve, but it's like sealed, permanently sealed, and the different and all my steps. So if you wanted to replicate them, because it's open source, so the Substack one is probably more relevant to what we talked about today. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So just a reminder to everybody, our next community conversation is going to be on February the 5th. It's going to be in honor of Black History Month. So we want to talk about the Black experience with COVID and long COVID, and try and make up for how underrepresented people of color tend to be in the COVID conscious community. Amanda, I know that you're already reaching out to some people to be potential guests. But if anybody has suggestions for people we should invite to that, I think most of you already follow us on social media. So please reach out. You can also, I know you can contact Sarah and I at via email at Sarah and Air Support Project and Melissa at Air Support Project.
Oh,
Or you
I
can
think
email me, Teresa at publichealthactionnetwork.org, or you can message us on any of our social media accounts.
there's
And it will make its way to our group.
That's right.
there's a doctor. Is it Dr. Alobata? I'm trying to remember her exact name. She speaks about the pulse oximeter issues, the calibration, and
Yes.
how there's a lot. They're trying to create lawsuits to push these companies to take action on them, because that's been known since the 90s. Um, I'm trying to remember. Her name is hard to pronounce for me, but I can try to
Yeah,
look it up.
Jon Jon, if you can just DM us the link, if you don't need want to look it up now, that would be great. That sounds like a very relevant topic for us to cover.
And yeah, so she's based in Oakland, so she serves that community and speaks about it a lot. Sort of that side of it. And also, I wanted to just mention that in the history of respiratory equipment, you should look up Garrett Morgan, who is the first person to make sort of a wearable fume hood, and it was intended for helping firefighters. And he faced racism in trying to get that invention out to those people who would benefit because they didn't want it for all these different reasons. And he ended up saving a person in a fire. Like he used it. He used his own invention, which was these like tubes that went low to the ground because that's where the oxygen would be higher, like the smoke rises. So he had designed this wearable fume hood that would help him breathe. And he saved people. And so he's like I think anytime uh and he only gets mentioned during the Black History Month times, I feel. And even maybe not even then. But it's related to sort of the beginnings of respiratory protection. Now, doesn't mean that the stuff we're using now is using the same physics concepts, but you know,
Oh, that's
through
cool.
all
That's
of
good to know.
history, people have, yeah, they've tried to do their own filtration, like the plague masks, but they weren't really based in real scientific principles. So I think that he's sort of credited as like the beginnings of that.
Cool. That's great to know. All right. I think we can call it a wrap.
Thank you, everyone. Great to have you all here and look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Thank you.
Great to see everybody. Thanks for coming.